Episode 9, Sexual Drive. In this episode, we take a look at the science of sexual drive. We consider what that reveals about our path to quitting, so that we can learn to manage our sexual desire rather than having it manage us. Hello there. I'm Stephen McConnell. I'm a life coach. I'm a Christian. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But no matter who you are, I hope this podcast helps you in your struggle with quitting porn, helps you to better manage your sexual desire, and helps you believe again in a future that will be bright for you. It's common for users of porn to really resonate with statements like, I have a high sex drive, or my sexual needs aren't being met, or even, I suffer with libido problems. But if a close friend put us on the spot and said, what do you mean? We might try to explain how we feel, but most of us would struggle to explain why we feel it. Imagine for a minute that it was a thing, that you could go to some lab or doctor's office near your house and take a test that could confirm, yep, you have a high sex drive. What do we think the results would look like? What is our concept of the chemistry of sex? Do we understand what causes these feelings that we all experience? Today, I want to dive into that topic more deeply so that we can all come out a little more informed about what recent science has to say about our sexual drive and what it doesn't say, so that we can better understand our own feelings and our own behavior. So, for just a minute, I'm going to tell you the science-y story of sex and the main chemicals involved in it. And if you can't remember all the chemicals, that's totally fine. Don't worry. I'm still going to explain the relevancy for how this helps us to quit porn. So, where does sexual drive begin? Testosterone is the hormone that drives natural sexual desire in both men and women. Men have higher levels than women, but it plays a role in both of our bodies. When pleasure of any kind is experienced, dopamine is released to tell us we want more of that thing that we just had. So together, testosterone and dopamine drive the wanting portion of our sexual desire or libido. If we then begin to encourage those desires by entertaining thoughts of sex, we start looking at images, or we start to stimulate ourselves, then the chemicals acetylcholine, which excites our muscles, and norepinephrine, which is actually involved in the fight or flight response in humans, those chemicals together initiate the physical arousal that increases our heart rate and genital blood flow. If continued stimulation occurs, the norepinephrine peaks, maintaining high arousal and maximal pleasure, meaning dopamine is also being released at its peak. During orgasm, a surge of dopamine and oxytocin occurs. The experience is not only pleasurable, but the oxytocin is a bonding hormone that strengthens feelings of attachment. So, oxytocin is why we feel bonded to people we have sex with. After orgasm, the brain chemicals serotonin and prolactin rise, which work together to give a feeling of satisfaction and contentment. And at the same time, they decrease sexual desire, often cause drowsiness, and typically trigger a temporary refractory period in men where erection and orgasm are difficult. The fact that serotonin inhibits sexual desire is why some people on antidepressants struggle with sexual arousal. So, bringing it back to how the cycle starts, with testosterone and dopamine, while most men like to think they have high testosterone levels, this generally is not true. I found out the hard way because I literally had my levels tested and they were completely normal. In fact, the majority of men today have lower testosterone levels than generations before us. If that surprises you, there are multiple recent studies that have confirmed this to be true. Feel free to Google it if you want more info. The bottom line is that fat converts testosterone into estrogen, so rising obesity contributes to declining testosterone. So if it's not testosterone that's elevating our desire for sex, then the only other chemical that can be responsible for increasing our sexual desire is dopamine. And the interesting thing about dopamine is that it is a reactionary chemical. Your body produces it on demand to reward pleasurable behavior. So you have to have done the behavior in the first place for it to be rewarded. This means that what perhaps started out with hesitant glancing and mostly just curiosity about porn eventually led to a growing desire for more of it. So what's the difference between the desire for sex and the desire for porn? When married couples have sex, especially if they've been married for a while, often they've got a lot of other things going on in their lives, between kids, work, and different obligations, and sex doesn't usually last a long time. For example, it may last less than an hour or even just a few minutes. On the other hand, when users binge watch porn, typically gratification is delayed during a hunt for more stimulating images, sometimes even the perfect image, so that by the time orgasm occurs, the porn viewer is oversaturated with desire. And not just a desire for sex, but a desire for things that shock us or even flatter our self-image. In other words, we trigger more dopamine than is normal from sex, and simultaneously, we teach our minds to seek the same type of stimulation again, even if this virtual experience is not reflective of how most sex usually works. So, giving into porn decreases our desire for, quote, normal sex through serotonin and prolactin release, while increasing our desire for the artificial experience with dopamine. What does all that mean? It means if we feel like our sex drive is high, then at some point we have to be responsible and own up to the fact that we have a role in creating it. That may be hard for some of you to hear, especially you younger men whose testosterone is naturally higher than others. On the one hand, I agree that sexual drive can be naturally strong, even if we don't think we are doing anything to contribute to it. But when we give into porn repeatedly, we weaken our ability to make a conscious choice to not participate in it in the future. But that doesn't mean we can just throw in the towel and say, okay, I guess I don't have a choice in the matter anymore. I'm caught in the porn trap. I mean, you could say that, but it's not going to get you anywhere. And ultimately, we are all still personally responsible for the consequences of our choices, even if that was a choice 20 years ago to open a magazine when we had a pretty good idea of what was inside of it. But let's play devil's advocate for a minute and just say that it's true. What if we really do have a high testosterone level or abnormally high sex drive, and it's not because of anything we did? Does that give us an exclusive license to view whatever we want, whenever we want, because we're different? The interesting thing about sexual drive is that it was only ever intended to be used for one thing: natural, physical sex. So to use our high sex drive as some sort of entitled right to view porn is a thought error, because men and women 50 years ago surely had sexual drive just as high as we do, and none of them thought they deserved high-speed, on-demand internet porn. It just wasn't a thing. So how could we possibly be entitled to it if 50 years ago it didn't even exist? Isn't it interesting how we convince ourselves that the only recourse we have in responding to sexual desire is to feed it? The point here is that no amount of desire that we personally experience can force us to view porn. That is a choice. Nor can any amount of desire repair the consequences that porn has on us and the people creating it. So, We can't use our high desire as an equalizing excuse that somehow makes everything fair game. It makes nothing fair. In fact, the more that we want porn and the greater cost that we are willing to pay in order to get it is only proof to the fact that our desire has become unnatural and unbalanced. There are simple joys in life that can be found in so many other ways, but none of those other things matter to us anymore when we allow our sexual desires to become king. At this point, some of you are thinking, okay, Stephen, I can see what you mean. I have allowed my sexual desire to become king, but what do I do about that now? Let me begin to answer that by asking a totally random question. Do any of you have gardening experience? Like you try to grow things either in pots or flower beds or an actual for real garden? Maybe you even have a farm. I don't know. So if you have experienced that frustration in trying to grow things that should just naturally grow, I mean, it's a seed, for crying out loud. You're giving them sunlight, water, and soil, and the progress is just slow. And then one day you get this brilliant idea to pour a little fertilizer on it, and boom, out pops strawberries and squash or whatever you were trying to grow. It's amazing, right? But fertilizer also has consequences, beginning with the manufacturing process. The industry generally causes massive air and water pollution. The process of creating fertilizer releases a lot of greenhouse gases like nitrous oxide. It also releases toxic chemicals like ammonia that can even be flammable and explode. And yes, this has happened even as recently as 2013 in the USA, when the West Texas fertilizer plant exploded and killed 15 people and injured over 160 more. It was devastating to that community. So there are manufacturing concerns. And when we use fertilizer, it is really easy to way overdo it and to unintentionally harm the soil, harm the plants, the wildlife, and the waterways around us. All right, so now you're thinking, Stephen, I get it. You're a hippie. So what does this have to do with my porn problem? Pornography is fertilizer on your sexual desire. In most cases, we can't really argue that there's any justifiable need for it. There are plenty of ways to grow plants without using industrially manufactured fertilizer. Compost works just fine. Similarly, there are ways to become aroused for sex in marriage without pornography. We don't need it. Porn is not natural, and the proof is in the fact that once we get mixed up in using it, we have sexual desire growing through the roof for porn, and we can't figure out how to shut it off. And we find ourselves in the paradoxical situation of trying to figure out how to shut down our desire for porn while we're still regularly using it. It doesn't make sense. To turn down the heavy dopamine urges, we have to stop feeding our sexual desire with artificially manufactured stimulus. Porn should come with a banner warning, just like all those Viagra ads that say, "Caution, if you have an erection lasting for more than 4 hours, please discontinue use of this product and call your doctor right away." But unfortunately, the law hasn't caught up to the porn industry in the same way it is catching up to the pharmaceutical industry. What does that mean? It means that no one is going to say no for you. You can't stop the plant from manufacturing fertilizer, but you can stop buying the fertilizer and using it regularly. But it's hard, you say. Yes, it is hard. Saying no to porn is difficult when you've been using it regularly, but you have to start somewhere. And let me remind you that dealing with the consequences of porn use is also difficult. So, which problem would you rather have in your life? The problem of continued porn use that's causing you to lose all your self-respect? Or the problem of not knowing how to properly manage your mind and your emotions while you quit? I promise that the latter problem is solvable. We can learn how to manage our minds. Saying no to porn is possible. Believe me, I say no to porn often. And I haven't even looked at it in a really long time, and still the urge comes up for me. But I have learned to say no. And that's not because I'm some special person. Ooh, yay me. I've had my own struggle with sexual desire, or I wouldn't be on a podcast talking about it. So please believe me when I say, if it's possible for me, then it's possible for you too. I have to believe that because I believe that God loves you. And He has not given up on you. And so I won't either. You can do this. Yes, you right now, listening to this podcast. You can do it. Trust me. All right, my friends, I'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you for joining me in the episode today. For those interested in one-on-one help, claim your free consultation with me at GratefulLifeCoaching.com. That's GratefulLifeCoaching.com.